Hi there, Mr. McGinnis again. Welcome, welcome, welcome back for more. Here to talk about Chapter 7 in Acroasis XVIII, where we're going to talk about adjectives and third declension nouns. You've learned some of these things, so you've learned adjectives on their own, you've learned third declension nouns on their own. Now, like oil and water, time for us to put them together. So we'll talk about how adjectives and third declension nouns can work in beautiful, beautiful harmony. So first of all, let's do a quick review, right? You always want to know where you're coming from before you learn anything new. So let's talk about third declension nouns real quick. What do we know about third declension nouns? Well, you already know how to decline them, right? Declining them is easy. We know how to decline first declension. We know how to decline second declension. Now you know how to decline third declension nouns. Step one, find the stem. Okay, we find the stem of every noun the same exact way. To find the stem of a noun, you go to the genitive singular, you remove the genitive singular ending. In the third declension, that genitive singular ending is always is, right? It doesn't matter if it's masculine, it doesn't matter if it's feminine, it doesn't matter if it's neuter. The genitive of a third declension noun will always end in is. So the example that you see there, rex regis, you go to regis and you drop the is, you have reg, right? You don't use the x from rex, that doesn't matter. Right? It's like if you had $1, the nominative gives you 10 cents, the genitive gives you 90, right? The genitive gives you a lot more information that you need to deal with. Step two, right? Based on the noun's gender, you see a little chart here of your endings, right? Slightly different from the masculine, feminine to the neuter, but nothing too complex, right? So you put a blank in the nominative. Remember, typical Latin 1 mistake, people are like, oh, that must not have a nominative then. No, crazy talk, right? Of course it has a nominative. Every noun has a nominative. That blank is there because the variety of endings for a third declension nominative is so diverse, there's nothing we can put there, right? It's not like the first declension where everything ends in A, or the second declension where almost everything ends in US, right? We put a blank there because there are so many different ways a third declension nominative can end. Same thing in the neuter. Realize in the accusative, that doesn't mean the accusative doesn't exist. That means that the accusative is the same as the nominative, and you run down the same path of saying it's a blank because there are so many different endings. Okay, so third declension nouns, no big deal. Even easier than third declension nouns, first and second declension adjectives. Okay, we've done this. You know how to do this. So let's talk about magnus, magna, magnum, a 1/2 adjective. When you have an adjective, adjectives decline in all three genders, right? Think about it. In English, this should be perfectly comfortable to you. So if you use the adjective great, right, hey, that's a great man. Hey, that's a great woman. Oh, cool, what a great thing, right? And that's three different genders that the adjective magnus has to modify. And so in Latin, it should make perfect sense to us that an adjective can be any gender it needs to be, right? An adjective can be masculine, and for a 1/2, it uses the second declension masculine endings. For a feminine, it uses the first declension feminine endings, and for a neuter, it uses the second declension neuter endings, right? So magnus, magna, magnum. You can look in your textbook if this is all strange and confusing to you. Maybe you missed that day. Page 33 in your textbook has this very same chart, okay? And you can figure that out. Now, that's your review, right? Third declension nouns, 1/2 adjectives. Seems like oil and water, right? We haven't talked about any sort of combination of the two yet, where on the one hand you have third nouns, on the other hand you have first, second adjectives. How in the world can we put them together? Well, let's talk about noun-adjective agreement very briefly. There is an incredibly important rule that you must understand about noun-adjective agreement. Okay, simply put, an adjective must agree with the noun it modifies in three different ways. Okay, three different and very important ways. First, case. Right? Whatever case your noun is, the adjective has to be the same case. That's how you identify that that's what the adjective is modifying. Right? You look for something that's the same case. So nominative, genitive, dative, accusative, ablative. Second, once you identify case, hand in hand with that is number. Right? If you see a nominative singular, the adjective that modifies it has to be accusative singular. Or excuse me, what's it called? Nominative singular. If you see a genitive plural noun, the adjective that modifies it has to be genitive plural. Okay? That's how we know what adjective a noun is modifying. Last but not least is gender. Right? If you have a noun that's masculine, like we just talked about with magnus, right? Adjectives use all three genders. So you have to have the same gender on the adjective as you do on the noun, right? That's how a Roman would have understood this is what I'm talking about, right? They agree in case, in number, and in gender. Three ways. What's missing, right? That's not everything that we know about nouns and adjectives, okay? So there's got to be something missing. So take a second and think to yourself, a little ponder sesh. What exactly have we not said? They have to agree in case, number, and gender. They do not have to agree in ending. Okay, and this is an incredibly important point, and it's one that to some of you guys might seem simple in mindset, right? But actually doing it in usage can be tricky. To say that Form 1 and Form 2, if they don't have the same ending, how can they possibly agree? Right? We'll talk about that as this little presentation continues. But it's because of that noun-adjective agreement that you see on the screen in front of you, that since they must agree in case, number, and gender, nowhere are we saying they have to agree in ending. Right? We didn't say they had to agree in declension number, and we don't say they have to agree in ending. So, this is also not particularly new, right? If we took the adjective magnus, for instance, which is a 1/2 adjective, which we've already seen decline 2 slides ago. If you don't remember, pause, go back. And the noun agricola, which means farmer. Now, agricola is a weird noun because agricola is a first declension masculine. Almost everything you learn in the first is feminine, agricola being an exception, right? So now we're taking magnus, which is a 1/2 adjective, and so uses in the masculine second declension endings. And we're taking agricola, which is a first feminine, and we're pairing it with magnus. So we're taking, or excuse me, a first masculine. We're taking a first masculine, like agricola, and we're taking a second masculine, and like magnus, and we're trying to put them together, right? Now, your instinct is to say, no, right? I took math. 1 does not equal 2. That's okay. Right? Don't get bogged down in the declension number because nowhere in the little agreement rule I just gave you did we mention declension number. They have to agree in case, number, and gender. So, here you go. Right? If I wanted to decline the great farmer, I could do that. And they're not going to look alike. That's okay. Right? Agricola magnus, both nominative, both singular, both masculine. You go all the way down the line. Right? You go to the ablative singular. Agricola with a macron, magno. Right? Those aren't the same endings, but is agricola ablative singular feminine? Yes. Is ablative singular masculine. Agricola is ablative singular masculine. Magno is ablative singular masculine. Right? Same in the genitive plural. Right? Agricolarum, that's genitive plural masculine. Magnorum, genitive plural masculine. So do those forms agree in case, number, and gender? You better believe it. Right? Do they agree in ending? No. But hopefully, as you're starting to understand, that doesn't matter. Which leads us to another issue. Third declension nouns paired with a 1/2 adjective, right? Again, put on your little math thinking cap. 3 does not equal 1/2, right? They are inherently different declensions. So what do we do? If they have none of the same endings, right? A third declension noun, that's different than a 1/2 adjective. Any one of us is smart enough to recognize that. So they must never be able to agree, right? No, not true. Right? Nowhere in that little rule of agreement, the rule of agreement that you should hold near and dear to your heart for the rest of your little Latin lives, right? An adjective must agree with the noun it modifies in case, in number, in gender. It doesn't matter if they agree in ending. So these third declension nouns and 1/2 adjectives, which will never agree in ending, they can go together, right? So you might be thinking about oil and water, right? Third declension being the oil, 1/2 being the water, never going to combine, right? But it doesn't work that way. Just because they're different declension numbers doesn't make a difference. A third declension noun can be modified by a 1/2 adjective, right? It makes sense, right? Because if you think about it, let's say king, right? You know king, which is a third declension noun. You also know farmer, which is a first declension noun. Well, the adjective great is 1/2. But if a farmer can be great, pretty sure a king can be great too, right? Henry the Great, right? There are all sorts of great kings, or at least in their own minds they were great. So we have to find a way for that to be okay, that a third declension noun is paired with a 1/2 adjective. And so we did, right? You can combine it together. It's no big deal. The great king. King is third declension and uses the third declension noun endings that we saw a couple slides earlier. We saw Magnus declined in full a couple slides earlier. And so here you just see it together. None of these endings are the same. That's okay. They don't have to agree in ending. They have to agree in case, number, and gender. So again, like we did with Magnus and Agricola, if you look, for instance, at the accusative singular, right? Regem is accusative singular and masculine. Magnum is accusative and singular and masculine. They agree the 3 ways that they have to: case, number, gender. If you look at the dative plural, right? Regibus, dative plural masculine. Magnis, dative plural masculine, right? Those agree. They don't have to have the same ending. And this is going to be true regardless of the gender of the noun, right? So no matter what gender you're is, if, for instance, you think of merit, the noun virtus virtutis, which is third feminine, well, I can say great merit, right? I use virtus, which is a third feminine, and I pair it with magna, which is a first feminine, because that's the way 1/2 adjectives work. If I had a neuter noun like corpus, right? Corpus corporis means body. I pair that with magnus right? Magnum is the neuter. So again, we're taking third declension endings and pairing with an adjective that's either first declension or second declension. And that is okay. It's perfectly okay. If they agree the three ways they need to, say it with me. Case, number, gender, right? Not an ending. Case, number, gender. If they agree in those three ways, you're good. Okay? Here's your final parting blow. An adjective must agree with the noun it modifies in case, number, and gender. An adjective does not need to agree with the noun it modifies in ending or in declension number. Okay? If you remember nothing else from this fun little video, I want you to remember that. An adjective must agree with the noun it modifies in case, number, and gender. An adjective does not need to agree with the noun it modifies in ending or in declension number. So it's perfectly okay for our third declension adjectives, the third declension nouns, to go with 1/2 adjectives. There's a Google form I need you guys to fill out. You see its address right there, and I will see you again